going on, guys? Dewink here, and welcome back to another discussion video on the channel. And discussion we certainly have in droves. We have quite a bit to go over in today's video with regards to specific announcements, Magic Foundations era, and so on and so forth. So for those of you who don't know, the MagicCon Vegas is taking place this weekend, which also happens to be the hosting of the Magic the Gathering World Championships. Perhaps a little poor timing on that. We'll get into why in a second. But they made a very, very huge announcement. If you would like to take a look at the articles yourself, we're going to be discussing two specifically. I will link them in the description down below for your viewing pleasure. Before we continue, as always, if you enjoy the content on the channel and you want to see more like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you have anything to say, as I'm sure most of you will, let me know in the comments section down below what you thought of today's video. So we are going to get started with the Foundations era. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, the next Magic the Gathering expansion is going to be called Foundations. It's similar to, if you recall prior, what's the last time they had a core set? A couple of years ago, I think it was 2021. It's pretty similar to core sets of years past in terms of the complexity and the foundations that are, well, foundations within foundations, sort of building blocks. A lot of easy to understand mechanics, relatively low complexity cards, and cards that are going to be the building blocks of Standard, and it is going to be legal for an extended period of time. I believe it's 5 years. So that is the next set that's going to be released. Now, along with that comes the Foundations era of Magic. And you might ask yourself what that means. We'll get into that in a second. I just want to skip down here because there's some interesting parts that I want to go over, well, in the next article. But as far as the roadmap for 2025 is concerned, they did kind of lay out what we're going to be getting in terms of sets. So Innistrad Remastered coming in 2025. Big fan of going back to Innistrad. That's pretty cool. They showed off some cards here. Edgar Markov got a little bit of a retrain here. And then they showed off this kind of new version, which I believe they said headliner cards are now a booster fun feature beginning with Innistrad Remastered. Single card that has been illustrated, crafted with foil treatment, yada yada. So if you're into that kind of fancy foil promo stuff, which is not generally my cup of tea, but I can appreciate a good foil, a good promo now and again. So that is Innistrad Remastered. Aether Drift, which appears to be sort of like a racing vehicle-themed set, which is pretty cool. I love vehicles. I think that card type has a lot of exploration and a lot of things that they could do with it. They showed off some cards here. Duretti, Earth Rumbler, this Gear Hulk, which is kind of sick. 4/4 first strike trample for 4. And then you can search for 2 artifact creatures and or enchantments with mana value 1 or less. Put them into your hand and shuffle. So a lot of stuff there for a 4-mana 4/4. We will be going back to Tarkir Dragonstorm, so sort of a return, and they did tease we're going to be getting some sort of Ugin. We don't really know what it is. They showed off the artwork here. Not sure if it's going to be an expensive card, maybe a cheaper Ugin. No idea there. Final Fantasy, which we kind of already had. We knew Final Fantasy was coming. We didn't necessarily know how it was going to be legal in terms of what the product was going to be directed towards. And then Edge of Eternity is down here. And then the Marvel collaboration arrives, which they've announced it's just going to be Spider-Man, not, entirely, not the whole Marvel universe. Perhaps they're saving that for other IPs. They might have a reason for that. But yeah, here's what it sort of looks like. So Aether Drift, Tarkir, Fantasy, Eternities, Spider-Man, and then the additional, I believe it was Unannounced Universes Beyond. Now, along with Foundations comes a couple of things. One of them, I believe, was down here, the return of MSRP. I mean, I assume that's a good thing. We're not going to be really going over that today. I would imagine that it does seem like it's very, very important to have stores making sure, the way that I understand it is now they're like, the manufacturer's suggested retail price, the stores will have this, and this is what you ideally should be paying for them. And if the stores are charging you more, that you have an idea for that. But that is not going to be the focus of today's video, but just wanted to bring it up just to make sure that you are aware. I'll link this article as well if you want to read along more. But we are going to go over, well, so it's a little bit of a spoiler, the most important, or what I believe to be the most important part of today's announcement or article, and that is every single set, including Universes Beyond, that is going to be released moving forward is going to be legal in all formats. So Final Fantasy, Spider-Man, whatever other IP or universes beyond that they decide to make moving forward will be legal in Standard, Pioneer, Modern, Legacy, so on and so forth. Now, that's a lot to process. And to be honest with you, when I first heard the news, I kind of didn't believe it. And it took me a little while. It took me a little while to process everything to make sure that I was understanding everything properly. So let's go over this article and maybe we can kind of just see what their reasoning or what is their vision for making all of these products legal in all formats. So you might be thinking that's too many direct to modern sets. That was, before we knew they're all legal. To avoid that problem, as well as solve a couple of others, we changed how we design universes beyond sets, making them appropriate for all major constructed formats, just like what you consider normal Magic sets like Bloomborough. So another big thing to note is, I don't know if there's a specific article for it, but the way that they're going to be distributing sets, there's going to be 6 standard releases every single year, which I believe is one more than this year. I believe we had 5 in 2024, and they're going to be half non-universes beyond and half universes beyond. So there's going to be an equal distribution in terms of Magic versus non-Magic, but they're all going to be legal in all formats, which is another pretty big change. There's a lot more universes beyond products. But past that, so here's the big question. Why bring universes beyond to all formats? So the first note here is newer players that come into Magic through universes beyond can be properly pathed into smaller formats where their decks have a chance to be competitive. Veteran players should appreciate a reduction in straight to modern sets that have created more churn in the format than typical sets do. And their design team gets to do what they do best, which I sort of understand that. The way that their design team is trained, they are, in a general sense, making a lot more standard legal products than any other set. So I sort of get that aspect. With regards to the newer players that come into Magic through universes beyond, I'm not exactly sure that is necessarily what's going to happen here. So you have to think about the player base. And if you go back a couple of years to when they first introduced Universes Beyond and they announced they're going to be getting into IPs, everybody was shocked and they couldn't believe it at first. And I think part of what's been happening over the past couple of years is the people who choose not to engage with specific IPs can just go play either Standard or Pioneer, where they don't have to engage with those IPs. But now that same player base that trusted the fact that you would not force these certain IPs upon them, now those people don't have the opportunity to opt out anymore. Basically, it goes back to the tweet a while ago where it was something like, if you don't want to engage with this product is not for you, right? If I decide that Spider-Man is not for me, and I would normally go to a format where Spider-Man is not legal, but now I can't do that because they're legal in all formats. So I think that's not necessarily the case of what's going to happen, just because, again, all of these players that went to Standard, like the people who didn't want to engage with UB before, now they have to. With regards to veteran players should appreciate a reduction in straight to modern sets that have created more churn in the format than typical sets do. Yes and no, right? All of us modern players know that the impact that stuff like Lord of the Rings and Modern Horizon sets, we know the massive shifts in the format. We know what those create. And it's almost sort of weirdly something to look forward to, because Modern has gotten to a point where the average Standard release doesn't really have much. If you go look at Duskmourn, maybe there's a couple of cards. I think most notable is Fear of Missing Out. There's some of the Delirium stuff. Maybe an Overlord could be okay, but what is the number? Probably like 4 to 5 tops. So the more that you shift the focus towards Standard level play, the less those cards are going to be impactful in Modern, because it's a very, very difficult design challenge to have a card impact a format with 20 years of history that doesn't just completely break Standard. So that is a very fine line to cross. I go back and I think to something like Fable the Mirror Breaker, right? Fable the Mirror Breaker was just about good enough to make it into Modern, very good in Pioneer, but it was banned in Standard for that reason. So you don't want to make a bunch of Fable the Mirror Breakers, because then the Standard format is just going to become saturated with broken cards. The other issue that I see here is if you are sort of dulling down the power level enough to where it is appropriate for standard level play, then who really wants the product besides the standard players? Because maybe there's enough for Pioneer. We really haven't seen any of these universes beyond products in a Pioneer sense. We've seen them in Modern, but as far as Pioneer is concerned, we haven't really seen what that entails. So it'll be very interesting to see how the sets are designed. Like if you go back and look at Assassin's Creed, for example, which I believe they even called out here. So with Modern Horizons 3 still fresh in veteran players' minds, it's worth stating that our ideal rollout for straight to modern content is just that, the occasional Horizon set, which good to know that they're still willing to do the Horizons products, because that is really how you sort of have this forced rotation, and without it, we'll just be playing energy mirrors for the next 20 years. Trying to make many such sets is difficult, and the landing strip is narrow. As you can see, the format dominance of the One Ring, side by side with the near complete lack of impact in the format from Magic the Gathering Assassin's Creed cards. So that's kind of the issue, right? If you look at the power level between Assassin's Creed and Lord of the Rings, there's a pretty huge shift. And it almost makes you think, like, when they were designing Assassin's Creed, was this already on the back burner, right? And that's maybe why the power level was dulled down so much. But maybe they designed the set, but maybe they were like, okay, well, we're not quite ready to make the leap into standard play. Let me know in the comments section. I haven't checked the entire Assassin's Creed card file, but like, I can't imagine there's a ton there that would have that much of an impact on standard. And there was essentially no cards that were worth playing in modern just because the power level of that format is just so unbelievably high. But again, I think the big thing that I want to highlight here, it goes back to the players that wanted to opt out before. The only saving grace for them was standard. And now those players don't even have the opportunity to opt out anymore. As far as the new player introduction, I mean, I don't really know. There's no people that I know specifically that like go to the LGS that are newer players that are like interested in competitive Magic because they got into a Universes Beyond product. Most of the time, they want the Universes Beyond product because they connect with the IP. They're not connecting with the game Magic the Gathering in the same way that they're, oh, hey, here's Spider-Man on a Magic card. I want to own that because it looks cool. They don't really care about competitive play. But now it seems to be that those Universes Beyond products are going to, at least maybe in the short term, be the face of competitive play, at least for standard purposes. And you can kind of see this shift happening with the push towards standard, where if you look at the RCQ seasons over the next 4 seasons, 3 out of 4 of them are standard. So they are clearly pushing standard as a competitive format, which, to be honest, is kind of even makes this worse, where if it fails, you have decided that you wanted to push standard as a competitive format, but less people want to engage with standard because they don't want to engage with this Universes Beyond product. So at the end of the day, it is a lot to take in. And again, I've been playing this game for so long, and I've seen them make catastrophic mistakes year after year after year. And I always like to give them the benefit of the doubt and try to look at things with maybe a little bit more optimism. It's really tough to do with this because I am invested in the game Magic the Gathering. I don't necessarily care if I don't care about the IPs. That's not necessarily something that I engage with. Now, I'm not opposed to it. Like, I'm not saying that I'm not going to play Magic because Final Fantasy is in it. You know what I mean? But it's not something that draws me to a competitive format. And I feel like that is going to be the case for a lot of people. Now, there is a very large subset of people that are completely against this, and I don't necessarily fault those people. And those are the exact people that we talked about earlier in the video, where they thought that Standard and Pioneer was going to be a safe haven from all of this. If they actively did not want to partake or engage with these IPs, they had a platform to play on. And now those people don't have that platform anymore. So it'll be very interesting to see not only that, but how dulled down the power level is. Because again, it comes down at the end of the day where if the cards are not powerful enough to see play in Modern, and then Like, maybe there's a couple for Pioneer, maybe there's some for Standard, and perhaps that maybe at the Pro Tour next year, we'll see Sephiroth defeating Spider-Man in the finals. I don't really know what the Pro Tour is going to look like in 2025. Maybe in 2026, we'll, I mean, they did already announce the SpongeBob Secret Lair. Maybe a SpongeBob Universes Beyond? Who knows? But in any case, that is going to be it for today's video. I think we covered mostly everything that I wanted to. The 2 points that I wanted to kind of harken on the most were the newer players who maybe not as invested in the competitive side of things, and then the veteran players who wanted to try to avoid the IPs. I think those are kind of the big selling points. If you guys have any comments, please be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot. So in any case, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Adios.